Assalamu alaikum, and welcome back once again to Today in African History with Baba Shaka. I'm Baba Shaka, and today is May 26, 2021, and it is the anniversary of the Great American Transcontinental Foot Race, which came to be known as the Bunion Derby. Now, before we get started on today's subject, I just want to give you all a heads up about next month's focus. For the month of June, we here at Today in African History intend to dedicate the entire month to African scientists and inventors. Inshallah, we will be digging into names and subjects that are generally not taught in the schools of these here yet to be United States. So, be sure to subscribe and encourage others to do likewise and to share so that we can get this information into the hands, the heads, and the hearts of our young people. All right, now let's get to the Bunion Derby. From March 4th to May 26th in 1928, a unique event grabbed the attention of the American public. An 84-day, 3,400-mile foot race, yes, I said foot race, from Los Angeles to New York City, nicknamed the Bunion Derby. The 199 starters included 5 Africans born in America, a Jamaican-born African who was then living in Canada, and perhaps as many as 15 Latinos, Native American, and Pacific Islanders, representing about 10% of the competitors. The rest were white, and the Derby consisted of daily town-to-town stage races that took the men across the length of Route 66 to Chicago, then on to other roads to the finish in Madison Square Garden. All were chasing a $25,000 first prize, which was a small fortune in 1928 dollars. Now, given the racial climate of 1928, the African participation in the Bunion Derby seemed a risky venture, better suited for more tolerable racial times, either the 1870s when professional distance racing was the rage of and men of all races were accepted into this fold, or our modern times when the sight of African runners leading endurance events is an everyday occurrence. The 1928 race would take men into the Jim Crow segregated South, where most whites believed that blacks lacked the ability to concentrate at anything longer than the sprint distances, and, of course, had no business competing against whites. Bunion Derby organizer Charles C. Pyle looked back longingly to the 1870s when the craze for professional distance running gripped the land and sports promoters could make a fortune sponsoring these events. See, in those days, most towns and cities had their own indoor tracks where quote unquote pedestrians raced in 6-day go as you please contests of endurance. Participants were free to run, walk, or crawl around these tracks for 6 days, and they often set up cots inside the track oval and survive on 3 hours sleep a night. This was a sport of the working class, and fans bet money on their favorite pedestrian and followed them with all the excitement of today's NFL or NBA fans. Stamina, not ethnicity, was the single qualifier to become a pedestrian star. And Black America had its hero, Haitian-born Frank Hart, who made a fortune in the sport and averaged 90 miles a day in one 6-day endurance race. 90 miles a day. C.C. Pyle's Bunioneers, as they were called, found far harsher conditions than the pedestrians face in the calm environment of an indoor track. His men tackled the mostly unpaved and potholed Route 66 across the American West, running daily ultra marathons across 1,000 miles of the most challenging terrain on the planet, the 95-degree heat of the Mojave Desert, and the freezing mountain passes and thin air of Arizona and New Mexico. By the time the Derby reached eastern New Mexico, only 96 of the original 99 starters remained, including 3 of the 5 African starters: Eddie Gardner of Seattle, Sammy Robinson of Atlantic City, New Jersey, and Toby Joseph Cotton Jr. of Los Angeles, and of course, the African Philip Granville of Hamilton, Ontario in Canada. Okay? He came down for the race. Now, after overcoming all that, the African runners faced a man-made hell when Route 66 took them in Texas, where the Ku Klux Klan dominated the state legislatures and city governments of Dallas, Fort Worth, and El Paso. Gardner, Joseph, Cotton, and Granville were forced out of the communal sleeping tent into a colored-only tent, then bombarded with death threats and racial slurs as they fought their way across the muddy, tendon-ripping roads of the Texas Panhandle. In McLean, Texas, an angry mob surrounded Gardner's trainer's car and threatened to burn it, claiming that blacks had no business racing against whites. Of course we didn't, because every time we raced them, we beat them. So we have no race. That's, I guess, why we have no business racing them. Now, in western Oklahoma, a farmer trained a shotgun on Eddie Gardner's back and rode behind him for an entire day, daring him to pass a white man. After Philip Granville, you remember Philip Granville was the African born in Jamaica but lived in Canada. After his experience with Jim Crow segregation, he began referring to himself as a Jamaican Indian, and as he said, anything but Negro, and disassociated himself from the black runners. This abuse continued across Texas, Oklahoma, and Missouri, a total of 1,000 miles and 24 days of running hell before the Derby crossed into Illinois. And we all know that Illinois, especially back in those days, was not much better. It ain't too much better today, right? The men were helped along the way by tightly knit African communities in Oklahoma City, Tulsa, and Chandler, Oklahoma, that raised money for them, gave them a clean bed for the night, and a solid meal to keep them going in the face of so much hate. They also were supported and protected by some of the white runners who had bonded with them like brothers over the brutal miles of Route 66. The heroism of the African Bunioneers was a symbol of hope and pride to African communities they passed along the way, and to black America as a whole, who followed the men's struggle across Texas, Oklahoma, and Missouri in the Amsterdam News, the California Eagle, the Black Dispatch, Chicago Defender, and of course the Pittsburgh Courier. The competitors also put to rest the long-held belief that blacks were unsuited to long-distance running, given that 3/5 of the Africans finished compared to about 25% of the whites. Now, I'm not sure where they got this belief from, because as you remember, during slavery days, our ancestors were running from Mississippi and Alabama all the way to Canada. So distance running was not new to us. But the Derby also showed the nation that blacks and whites could compete against one another, even if they were not ready to live together in harmony. But on May 26, this date, in 1928, 55 weary, tired, exhausted men made their final laps around the track in Madison Square Garden that marked the end of the 84-day ordeal. 3 of the top 10 finishers were runners of color, including the $25,000 first prize winner, Andy Payne, a part Cherokee Indian from Oklahoma, the $5,000 third place winner, Philip Granville, remember the Jamaican-born African from Canada, and the $1,000 eighth place winner, Eddie Gardner from Seattle. These 3 Bunioneers were cut from the same social cloth as their white competitors. They were blue-collar men who were looking for a piece of the American dream. They didn't run for the loving cup or medals, but for prize money that could lift a mortgage off a farm, buy a house, or give their children some decent clothes to wear. And in the case of the African runners, they risked their very lives to do so. This was a far different mentality from the university athletes and members of the athletic clubs who looked down their nose at these working-class distance stars. But it was also strikingly modern, a herald of the rise of the professional sports in the years to come, where merit, not race, determined fame and glory. Now, you can read more about this almost forgotten event in Eddie Gardner's book, Race Across America, Charles B. Kastner's Bunion Derby, or Andrew Speno's The Great American Race. I'll list all the books down in the comment section so that you can grab one or all of them. I especially encourage those of you who consider yourself hotshot runners to look deeper into this event. Who knows? You may be gifted with a healthy dose of humility and a stronger desire to up your game. Thank you to all of our most appreciated or much appreciated subscribers. For those of you who have not yet subscribed, we invite you to hit that subscribe button just below the screen and join us on this journey of producing these daily lessons. Please like and leave a comment down in the comment section. But as I always say, most importantly, please share, especially with the young amongst us. So, until tomorrow, inshallah, This is Baba Shaka with Today in African History. Masalam.